Trisha Williams-Singh. Trisha is the chairman of the board of the Early Childhood Commission. Good morning, Mrs. Williams-Singh.
Good morning, Raymond, and good morning, listeners.
Listen, I'm so happy to have you join us this morning because what we're going to talk about is something that is of extreme importance, and based on all the reports we've had, Trisha, the criminal activities relating to sexual predation on our children increased, or should I say worsened, during the period of the COVID pandemic. So let's get straight into it. Let me update the listeners. Chairman of the board of the Early Childhood Commission, Trisha Williams-Singh, with whom we are speaking, is urging parents and guardians to protect our children from sex predators by enlisting them in only Early Childhood Commission entities. This is in regards to an allegation that an operator of a daycare is now before the courts on sexual grooming charges while facing another 40 sex-related counts. Trisha, take it from there.
Well, Raymond, just like with listeners, I'm sure not only shocked but heartbroken of this incident. And one of the things I like to share with my parents, and I keep reiterating it, parents, it's your responsibility to protect your children against everything. It's your responsibility. And I recommend in this day and age, ensure that the school, the daycare, anywhere you're sending your child, especially for learning between 0 and 8, that these institutions are registered with the Early Childhood Commission. Why do I ask for that? Because at the Early Childhood Commission, you have to, once you're an operator, once you're working with the children, caring for the children, you have to have certain documentation that is provided to the Early Childhood Commission, which includes a police record, which states pretty much fit and proper. Let me just give you just a little about the Early Childhood Act.
Yes.
No person shall operate an early child institution unless that institution is registered under this act. This act provides for us where you need to have a police record done, where the applicant is an individual or the applicant has not been convicted of an offense under the Dangerous Drugs Act, the Offense Against the Person Act, or the Child Care Act, and the Provision Act. So what I'm saying, there are all these acts that are there to protect your child, and an institution is obliged, once you're registered Early Childhood Commission, you have to produce this. What I'm learning now, and I did an interview recently sharing that we may have to relook at or legislation somewhat, Raymond. Let me tell you why, my listeners. Because within it is also saying that, for example, Raymond, you could be the owner of this institution, but because you're not operational, there's something that you're not required, that's not required of you. So in 2022 now, I am saying this presents, let's have a conversation, because we may have to deepen everyone that is registered within an early childhood
So
institution.
you basically are advocating, Trisha, that we widen or close the circle fully around all of the persons who have anything to do either as an administrator, an operator, or a tutor or caregiver within an early childhood institution.
And also an owner.
And
that's
an
what I'm
owner.
saying. We
Good.
need to have this conversation. I anticipate that we may get some, pushback here and there, but let us widen the conversation. Because,
well, Trisha, let me tell you, if you expect pushback, and pushback, listeners, is the signal that work is being done. It's a requirement of a law of physics. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So the only way to avoid a reaction is to not have an action. And if one thing I know about Trisha, and I can say this with all seriousness and all honesty, she is not one of those people that profile. She ain't no profiler. So even this kind of a review, and most of the recent legislation that have been passed in Garden House give a 5-year timeline for a review. And even when it does not have that automatic timeline for review, what you are saying makes perfect sense. And you can join this program on NewsTalk as one of your supports when the time comes to help to advocate for that. Continue, Trisha.
Thank you. And the other thing which I want to share with our listeners, and this started in 2018. Remember, we saw the need where Early Childhood Commission, so we look after children 0 to 8 years old. What we're seeing, we have a lot of early child institutions, and they, the government schools, we take children at 3 years and 8 months, if I'm not mistaken. I think, that's the age in which you can enroll in a government operated. So here's the word infant, that is government, right? And in 2018, we created the Brain Builder Centers, which now allows for schools to take the children as early as 3 months. 3 months. So the Brain Builder program, is a government initiative. And to date, I'm happy to share that we have 130 Brain Builder Centers across Jamaica in different constituencies to provide that level of service for our parents who need somewhere safe and, more importantly, free to leave your child.
And the good thing about that, the Brain Builder program emphasizes that school of thought, or reflects that school of thought, that the first 5,000 days of the life of an individual are the critical days when the full range of brain development and tactile and motor skills are being stimulated and enhanced, correct?
Correct, absolutely. The first 1,000 days is the most important of a child in its development. So, correct. And just to share where I want my listeners to understand that we are accessible. In the last 6 years as being chairman, a couple of things that I focus on is how can we make it more accessible to everyone? How can we disseminate information so that the reach is greater, the reach is wider? Raymond, I'm happy to say I've seen improvements within the Early Childhood Commission itself as a commission. But Trisha, I'm still not very pleased when I still have a few schools who we have them as being delinquent because they have not applied for registration with us. So
and just a second, Trisha. So delinquency would relate only to the institutions that have not started the process, because those that have started the process, your organization works with them to guide them through the registration process so that they can be successfully certified and completely registered.
Correct. So what you find, this is a culture, and I'm asking my Jamaicans, and for my listeners hearing me, we're celebrating Jamaica's 60th now. So let us look at 60 years now and beyond, right? And the commission was formed in 2003, if you can recall.
Hold on a second. You mean that this is not the 6th anniversary of the Early Childhood Commission?
No. The Early Childhood Commission came about in 2003, 2005. So technically, we're 19 years old, right? And what it is, you had then where the government at that time saw the need where, things are changing. You have persons who are caring for children, and the area, for want of a better word, the sector needs to be, and a lot of persons don't like this word, Raymond, but it's true, it has to be regulated, right? The same when you look at primary, secondary, and tertiary, right? We have to look at the early years. So in 2003, early childhood came about. Then Minister of Education and team, and our first chairman, who, congratulations to Professor Sam Vaughan. I see where she's receiving the Order of Jamaica this year. Congratulations on behalf of the people of Jamaica. Well deserved. So she was our first chairman. And within her team and their work, they have created these 12 standards that I like to talk about. We print them. The standards of Early Childhood Commission, which the first standard, which is critical, is staffing. So what I'm saying to our listeners, right? Where we are now, look at Jamaica 60th and beyond now, how we operated then can't be no. So if you have ideas of wanting to enter the early childhood sector of caring for the young ones, owning an early child institution, come to us first before you start your operation. Do not start an operation and then come to us, because sharing, this is how we began. So you were always there. So when we started then in 2003, 2005, because we saw the need, right? But it's now 19 years in now. So do not just have an idea that, oh, I want to take care of children, and you have a building and, oh, I'm going to start an early child institution. This is the name. No. Come to us first, and then so that we can guide you from the get-go. What are the things that you require? Because something as simple as this, Raymond, you have to have not only police record, you need to have building approval. You need to have the fire certificate. You need to have something from the Ministry of Health. You know,
let's talk a little bit about that relationship with the Ministry of Health, and it's more than a relationship, because there are some specifications. We've just now had on the front page of the Gleaner, a story about stroke alarm, not suggesting that it's that frequent among very young children, but they are at the age you're talking about. They're still considered infants, and you do have sudden infant death syndrome. So, is there any kind of paramedic training that
absolutely
take it from there?
Yes, Raymond, you have to do a pediatric training. You have to. Yeah. So what I'm saying, there are certain requirements, and that is why you have once you agree and you're going to look after children, you have to do the pediatric first aid. You have to, another thing which, Jamaicans and parents, I'm asking you, ask these institutions to display their permits to operate, and do not be afraid to ask what is the qualification
of the persons there.
Caregivers.
Yes.
Because the caregivers are supposed to have a level 1, level 2, or level 3 certificate from heart, right? A trained teacher, you're supposed to have minimum. I don't know what I said, Trisha, you're being hard. You really should have a first degree in early childhood development to look after our little ones, because how you teach or impart knowledge at early years is different from primary, and that is something that I always try to say to my Jamaicans and everyone. Every sector, there's a requirement. So early years, how you teach at early years is different than how you teach at primary. It's different than how you teach at secondary. And you yourself will know, because I know you lecture as well. It's different now when you get to tertiary.
Yeah, that's actually where it is easiest.
Absolutely, because what I try to tell everyone, you see, in early years, your role really, is to help that child to navigate the space, So the critical thinking begins there. So it's not you shouting at the child and telling the child, sit. No, the child is to sit there, and the child is to have access to the toys that will help him or her to develop one's motor skills, the learning, the understanding. That is where you start teaching the critical thinking. So when this person is in that room, or practitioner, caregiver, or teacher, once you're in that room, is to help those children to navigate the space. It's not instructing them, right? And that's how the children learn. And that is why the requirement, where we're saying at these institutions, you need to have a sleeping mat in every room. You wonder, why do you need a sleeping mat? Listen, every child learns differently. Every child responds differently. And your child may go to school, and at 9:15, your child would like a nap. Your child is to go and nap. So your child will make his or her way over to the sleeping mat area, lie down and go and nap.
Right.
While my child, for example, is ready to count, ready to take, and you understand?
And mine was marking up the wall with the marker and breaking the crayons and tossing them out the window.
Absolutely. The curriculum at early years in Raymond is to learn by play. That is the curriculum at early years. Where you start to sit down is when you transition now to primary,
yes,
where you now sit down and your focus is, the whole process is a little different, where you sit down and you're actually looking at that board, if you understand what I'm saying. And then, when you leave primary, when you go to secondary, it is a similar setup where the whole delivery of your secondary teacher is different, and as you make it easier when you become that professor.
Let us dial back a sec. So the section about the pediatric medical response, excellent. I'm happy to hear that is a part of it. Let's talk about food prep. I know primarily we as parents take stuff, snacks, bottles, and things like that. But even that I find to be quite a risk because once warmed and then cooled, the growth of bacteria has to be staunched by being warmed again. Then it cooled sufficiently for the child to be able to eat it. What kind of oversight for food prep does the Early Childhood Commission promote to those institutions that have already been certified and those that are journeying toward a certification, Trisha?
Okay, good question. And that's what Standard 7 speaks to. Standard 7 speaks to nutrition. Every early child institution must provide children in their care with nutritious meals and model good nutritional practices for children and families.
Yeah.
So having said that, it simply means that every institution should have a cook. Your cook is not the same as your caregiver. It's not the same as your teacher. And this person has to be trained in food preparation, food handling, and that is why it is important as well that the Ministry of Health gives you that certificate that you can actually perform and have all these. This person is to have one's training, and then we do know we have parents who want to send stuff to school with their children, right? It becomes the institution's responsibility to ensure that other than the packaging, but say the parent sends this and it needs to be in the fridge, right? Mm-hmm. You have to make those provisions. You understand? You have to, it's not, for want of a better word, steadfast, so you have to let the common sense go with the law. If you understand what I'm saying.
Fully.
It's also very simple where you would recommend to the parents that every child needs to have a labeled water bottle, right? Because we're not encouraging children to use someone else's water bottle, if you understand what I'm saying.
Well,
and
try as we may, and it's fine at home, but definitely in an institution setting where children are coming from several different families, you are absolutely correct, and it's important.
And that's why, Raymond, if I must say, that is why it is important that we reiterate, no child is to be left unattended.
Yes.
None. Your children are not to be left unsupervised. And that is why when I saw this report, like I said, shocked, heartbroken, and I'm saying, parents, I'm asking you, please, it is your responsibility. The same way I'm saying that once this child is placed in an institution, this institution is held accountable to that child and to that family.
Trisha, I'm going to make you perhaps a tad uncomfortable at this juncture, because people see you now, you are the Trisha Williams-Singh, but they don't know that you're from rural Jamaica. Initially, way back then, as am I. So we would have gone to Creech during that 0 to 5,000 days period, and the tendency is that because we go through it and we will make it, then it's okay. But the truth is, if we had the experience of a standardized institution as you have described, as you are advocating for as chairman of the ECC, imagine where we and therefore this country would have been. So for those people who are out in, say, Braze River or Craighead or Alligator Pond, are even more distant from the city than those areas are, how do they reach you? How do they reach the commission? Not you, Trisha, but the commission.
Listen, what I can tell you, Raymond, everybody have a cell phone. Everybody have a cell phone.
Everybody have your number too, Trisha.
The Early Childhood Commission is very simple. It's 876-618-2769. We're also on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. The Early Childhood Commission is everywhere. Do not hesitate to reach out to us using any of those mediums. Trust me, we are responsible responsive. And if you can't get through to the Early Childhood Commission, like I always say, it's not difficult to find Trisha Williams-Singh. Everybody has my contact or have a way of finding Trisha. But this is something I thank you for the opportunity for coming on. And you're absolutely right when I say to everybody where we are coming from and how we were raised, right? But we have to look at the generation that exists now and the other factors around us that's influencing our children, influencing our society, influencing what we do. So it is very critical that our parents and even all our stakeholders, the government of Jamaica, the opposition of Jamaica, the people of Jamaica, just come together and realize our most vulnerable are our children. Our most important asset equally are our children. They are the future. And I advocate for this all the time. If we spend more time on private sector, I hope you're hearing me, because I'm always begging and knocking on your door. If you do more at the early years, let us create more infant school, infant department. Let us create more playground area for our children. I promise you, 60 years from now, it's a different Jamaica.
Oh, absolutely. And that's not that far away, because Trisha and I will still be on the turf advocating for the required changes 60 years from now, as we are doing now. So get used to her voice, Jamaica today and Jamaica 60 years old. But the Early Childhood Commission Twitter handle is very bossy. Good morning, ECC family, says a tweet yesterday. Welcome to Wednesday Wisdom. What's available in your community parks, beaches, open spaces, and gardens? Here are some ideas for outdoor exploration in your community. By the way, this is one of the ways the Early Childhood Commission during the summer and all year around is helping families to help to keep the stimulation going while our children are not in the ECIs. And I just want to make a plug. Yesterday I had, Trisha, the opportunity, well, I was required to take the children to Fort Charles, and the tour guide her name is, the one that walked with us, her name is Sion. Obviously somebody I believe that you need to meet or perhaps have met and has gone through some of your training, because her ability to stimulate very, very young children, to get them to understand why the fort was built and the different aspects of the fort, and this children responded. So it's a different world. These children are far more engaging, stimulating, hungry for information. And it is important, as we close, and I'm giving the last word to you, Trisha, to reiterate again for our parents that it is important, therefore, that because our children are so open for information, that we ensure that we keep them in safe spaces. Go again with the reiteration, Trisha Williams-Singh, as to why we must choose those facilities registered with your organization.
Thank you so much again, Raymond, and thank you so much for our listeners. I plead with you, I ask with you, it is a requirement. Do not hesitate. Before you take your child to an early childhood institution, don't hesitate to contact us to find out if this institution is registered with us, to find out the standing of the institution, and also now that you have chosen the institution and you've gone there, do not be afraid to ask them to show you their permit of operation. Do not be afraid to ask the question as well about the job description, the qualification of the caregivers, the persons that you are now entrusting with your child, because it is your responsibility, my parents, to ensure that your children are safe. And as the Commission, it is our responsibility to ensure that these institutions that are registered with us are operating within the law and providing that safe, nourishing space for your children to develop to its full potential, because every child can learn and every child must learn and will learn with your support.
Well, could not have asked for it to be better said, Trisha. And you know, you're going to rebuff me for this, and when next we see each other, you will reprimand me, and that's fine. But you are very gracious to say that the Commission has been around since 2003, and we enjoin your congratulations to Professor Sams Vaughan. But Trisha, you gave the ECC new life, and that is entirely because of the nature and the approach you take toward getting things done. And for that, I think you should take a bow, and we salute you for that.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much, listeners and Jamaica. I really appreciate it. I love what I do. I love my country. And you know, Raymond, I may sound a little emotional now, and let me tell you why. Because last night, my dad came back to Jamaica to spend some time with me. And when you look at the fact that my dad has spent over 40 years in the United States working very hard to ensure that we went to school, we had proper education, unconditional love, do what we do, and to see my dad last night coming out of customs and, you know, fine, he's in a wheelchair. But the point is, it gave me such joy to say, look at my dad coming back, and I'm able to serve my people and give back to a country that has made me who I am today, and also my dad, the person he is today. I can't thank you all enough, and thank you for that recognition. I really appreciate it.
Trisha, drinks on me the next time we link. Don't worry about it.
Thank you so much.
We're have rest of the day. Be happy, be you, be safe. We are up on the news break, listeners. The NPR News follows these messages.